started live on LinkedIn. I'm going to start Instagram right now too, so folks can see on both places. Oh, it actually I think might be going. I just want to confirm that that's up so that everybody can join
Great.
the conversation. Is it there? Oh. And thank you, Reverend Rhetta, for joining.
Thank you for the invitation. Been,
Yeah, I'm
been looking
glad.
forward to it.
Yes. And now here we go. I found it.
Great.
All right. So now we're live on both Instagram and LinkedIn
Mhm.
for this conversation, Snatched Up by Rage. Snatched Up. And it's been such a gift to get to talk to you in this time as we're navigating life. Life be lifing, as a friend says so often.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that came up is we were talking about how the spiritual practices we have aren't working the same way for so many of us. And I'm grateful to be talking with you because you think about spiritual practice actually a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just as you're coming on, I'm wondering if there's anything by ways of introduction or uh, letting folks know who you are in relation to this conversation that would be helpful. As I'm glad to give some more framing too afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Introduction. Well, let's see. I am Rhetta Morgan, Reverend Rhetta Morgan. I'm an interfaith minister. I like to call myself a singing healer. A couple of my passions in this moment is grief work, accompanying people to practice, to create practices for themselves, to get in with community and practice together, and to make that like meditation is for some people where you really anchor in that practice to help you move through the times. And I feel like grief is one of those practices, so I'm passionate about that. I'm a mom and grandmom. I hope I'm a pretty good friend. I'm very silly, which I consider good medicine for these times. Silly, fun, movement, connection, laughter, all I consider kind of spiritual practice and good medicine for these times. Um, hmm, that's what I can think of in this moment. So anything you can think of that folks should know about me that I didn't remember?
I think those are the main ones, and I think people often look to you for a sense of steadiness
Mm,
too. I think
mm,
some of that is your interfaith minister identity, but I also think it's something you've cultivated over time. And
mm-hmm.
you are someone who I value who can be in relationship with the hard stuff. Like,
Thank you, thank you. I feel like that is the nature and texture of my ministry. Is that I was so compelled toward or curious about really, really hard stuff and how to be in it, be with it, how to navigate it. And that sort of has become sort of the thrust of my life. It's a thread that is woven through everything I do. So yeah, I um, treasure being able to be with folks when things are hard. Uh, Mainly because the thing that I notice first is the connection is the first and most potent medicine, right? So being with each other when things are hard, to bear witness to and listen deeply, are the things that I feel like I've learned in the 50 years or so of doing steady spiritual work. So yeah, that's a thing that I want to offer up throughout our conversation, being able to listen, cultivate what it takes to listen. Because often when I'm jumping in past the introduction,
that's
or
great.
maybe let's just call this part of the introduction.
Yes.
Yeah, but being able that business, what does it take for us when our bodies are screaming, when there's so much upset and that lack of balance, getting off center, all those things. What does it take for us to take a deep breath and find our way into being able to listen to and be with, rather than immediately respond, and respectful of the fact that we have reactions the way we do. It's a primal maybe primordial too, primal body um, inclination to respond with whatever it is, our go-to fear, anxiety, oh my God, like whatever. That's natural. So,
Yeah.
even to listen compassionately for that, but just to continue to keep going with the accompanying, the bearing witness, the listening to, the deep breath. Those are all the things. That's 50 years of work right there.
Mhm.
In terms of my antecedent, my um, medicine to this business of being snatched up by rage. But I know we'll get into it. Rage is very powerful, so I'm excited to talk further about
Mhm.
some of the uh, potency of rage in service to transformation, transmutation, and alchemy, right? Rage
Mhm.
is potent, potent. Okay, but yeah,
That's
that's
right.
a
The
long,
flame is right
long
there.
answer.
Please. I'm not expecting short answers as we talk, and I don't think people are. I will also say somebody already said yes to silliness and laughter. Appreciate that so much about you too. And
Thank you.
so it's
Thank you.
already being
Mm,
witnessed both by me, by you, as you acknowledge your own, and then by others.
mm,
And part of the work of this time of by this time, I don't mean this time, I mean part of the work of living and living a full life, working towards a sense of liberation and wholeness, feels like witnessing what is, and rather than cutting off different aspects, different parts of ourselves,
yeah.
including the places where we feel that rage, just like feeling grief, just
Mm-hmm,
like feeling disgust, just
mm-hmm,
like feeling passion and love.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And one thing that I've just started to notice is I feel like I've been working towards this time for years. Like there's a way in which my system is like, okay, ready to be present, not just by myself, but with all those around me.
mm-hmm,
And I've even noticed that there are times where the practices I'm used to
mm-hmm,
serve up to a point.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
It's not the first time this happened. Like 2020, 2021 was a time where I was like, all those things that were so helpful, they're not helpful anymore. The circumstances change, the environment's different.
mm-hmm,
And I'm thinking of a time I was just able to like be recently with folks. And then I'm in a meeting and I hear this executive order. You remember the thing that happened today? And it's just vague. And I don't go into panic anymore like
mm-hmm,
I used to. And then somebody said the thing. And I was like, okay, now I'm in my own reaction. And I'm just going to loosen some from the meeting, actually, and be with my reactions to see what needs tending to now, what parts need something now, and what parts need to be just witnessed. The
mm-hmm,
fear, the sadness, the anxiety, what parts of myself, the little ones in me, need acknowledgement right now. And then I can say, hey, I'll come back later because we built that bond. And then I
mm-hmm,
can come back to the meeting and be present.
mm-hmm,
And I'm thinking of one time that happened where I was like, okay, I'm present. And then somebody said a thing and it like opened the floodgates. Where this part of me was like, well, this is what was going to happen. And they laid out this way. And this is why it's horrible. And like, it just went in.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
previously, I would have been like, either lean in more in that moment to the
mm-hmm,
point where it just rolls down a hill, which not always a bad thing.
mm-hmm,
Or it could go to, oh, I guess I should be quiet and a more of a numbing strategy. How do I pull out of this? And in that moment, I noticed, hey, I'm just being actually present to say, oh, welcome, rage. Like it
mm-hmm,
came up in this moment, and nothing that I said do I feel wrong about.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And how do I honor that alongside other things when there are those moments that you get pulled up by it?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, we have to navigate that kind of thing throughout our lives. We work so hard to have the thing be nice and neat and set up. And then
Yeah.
here's something that we have little to no control over that just kind of comes on in there like a strong wind. And we're like, well, what? And have to adjust. It feels like we're in a time where we will have plenty of practice at the things coming in. And we'll
Yes.
be able to hopefully to uh, pay attention, to bear witness, to keep breathing, and then notice, like, what are the things, what are our go-tos in order to
Right.
cope, to manage, to navigate. We get to notice that. And and how are we going to dance with that rage? How are we going to dance with
Yes.
the primal that comes up
Yes.
and comes out of our mouth, or we act before we've had a chance to polish it up, right?
Hmm.
How are we going to who are we going to be in relationship to that? As I said, I think we're going to have plenty of practice. What
Yeah.
I'm hoping is that we do begin to have more curiosity than immediate fear and anxiety, and develop the ability to stay with ourselves, even in those places where the something is emerging that may not be the prettiest polished thing, right? I think this is the age of the messy. This is the age, we're in the
Mhm.
age of the messy. And with compassion and curiosity, we can name that as a precursor to what it takes to create, to transcend, to grow ourselves into the kind of complexity and nuance that will help us stabilize ourselves, to get steady, and then keep moving toward building this world, this just world. This vision that I feel like it's kind of sideswiped, is pushed off to the side right now, of justice, of fairness, of folks being able to receive respect just because they're breathing. Nothing about anybody's identity. Just because you are a being on the planet, you deserve to be respected. A deep bow to the God that is moving that breath through you. Each one of us deserves that on this planet, no matter who we are. And so all of that, I think, is off to the side. We're in survival mode, right?
Mhm.
But it's still back there. It's still back there, somewhere operating. I don't think
Yeah.
it's gone completely to sleep for most of us, right? Still back there operating. And so this work that we
Mm.
do, somebody said, and I'm terrible with quotes, that in the presence of love, all the things that are not love can come to the surface,
Mm.
right? To be reckoned, to be dealt with, to be reckoned with. Somebody said that, and this time feels like that for me. That we get to see these parts of ourselves we've worked so hard to keep covered,
Mm.
as a collective, as a nation, as a collective. And it mirrors a lot of the inner work that I have been doing, the places within me that I worked so hard to sort of prissy up, make sure it's neat and will fit in with wherever I am. And so, what I have found is when there's stuff in there that isn't being dealt with, it
Mm.
kind of collects and builds, and at some point, like combustion, it just comes out and something inappropriately said or done. I'm like, well, what in the world? How did that happen? Why did I do that? That kind of thing, right? Um, as an indication that there's something to be tended, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we will have plenty of time, I think, in these in the present now, in the pregnant now. We will
Mhm.
have plenty of time to notice what's happening, because the shit is happening so fast. We can't catch a breath to really settle back down in what we have known. Can't catch our breath for that, right? And
Yeah.
so that, I think the invitation is, don't catch it, to keep breathing into what's happening in the moment. Be with it. Let's love each other up,
Yes.
and stay connected as we go into the storm that we're in. That
Mhm.
we get to. I almost think it's a kind of privilege, though, really, to be on the planet right now, and to be able to go into this storm. It is extraordinary this time, right? It is
Mhm.
extraordinary. Okay, so I don't know what question you asked. I'm all off somewhere. So just to kind of bring us back to the tether,
Yeah.
I think what I remember you talking about is the fact that our spiritual practices are not working anymore. And a lot of what I was just saying is just, for me, sort of the background to that, like some of the why I think the spiritual practices aren't working. And it is exciting to me that while this is devastating, very hard, it also is this clarion call, this amazing invitation from the universe to, hey, come out of that stupor you're in. There's something else calling you. And if this is what it takes as a universe to get your attention, this is what's going to happen. I feel like we are really being called to step up and out of ourselves as we have known ourselves to be as a
Mm,
collective. And so, yes, it is terrible, but it's also a tremendous invitation and an extraordinary time to be on the planet to support this business that's going on right now, this back and forth. Some people might talk about it as like evil versus good, or chaos, or a complete meltdown. And what are we going to be? Who are we going to be on the other side? From my mystical, spiritual centered lens and standpoint, this is extraordinary. It's
mm,
extraordinary, terrible, and extraordinary.
mm.
So, with that kind of thinking, it makes it somewhat exciting to explore spiritual practice during this time. If I'm not coming from the place in me, very human place that goes into the dread, right? That contraction makes it harder to be creative and think, right? But so if I can open up to the curiosity, to this idea that this time is a terrible and extraordinary invitation to explore parts of the self that lie dormant when we live in our bubbles, in our schedules, crafted, and our responses and things are appropriate and measured, servings, all that. So to be invited out of those places,
Yeah.
that's juicy. That's juicy. So the spiritual practices, there's a couple things I want to say, and then I'm gonna take a pause.
Go
Um,
for it.
one thing is to do the spiritual practices that are ancient, different kinds of meditation, song, chant, movement. What else is the prayer? The traditional kinds of practices that have been on the planet probably since there've been human beings, uh, done in this time, are new or renewed because they're being done in this time.
Mm,
And I think the thing is to really to match your intention and the fervor with which you explore the practice with what you're feeling or what you are experiencing now. We can't go back to a version of
mhm,
a practice that we cultivated like pre-COVID, right? And
mhm,
so we had upsets, but we also had periods of time where fairly even kill for most of us, right? And so the practices work a certain way if we're
mhm,
practicing and our lives are set up a certain way. Even and none of us, nobody's perfect, so things are up and down. But there's this whirlwind that we have entered as a collective. So whatever's happening in our own lives, on
mhm,
top of that, we have all of these things that it's impossible to metabolize. It's impossible to really process. And it spins us into overwhelm, right? So
yeah,
now, if we acknowledge all of that, right, and go into our practice on the heels of all of those things, like what is my prayer practice? If I can notice that my body is reeling, right?
mhm,
What is my prayer practice? If I can sense, intuit, I can tell that I'm not going to be able to find an answer to none of us individually. We're hard pressed, even collectively, for a while. There's so much falling apart. It's going to take some time, right, to figure out our way out. I don't think we're going to figure out to live, to love our way out, to live our way out, to strategize our way out. These things are going to take time, I think. And so if we can practice almost on the edge of chaos, for instance, let me use that as an
mhm,
example, like the spiritual practice, prayer may start in the chaos that we are in. Now, as I say that, that's not really new. Every spiritual tradition only ever right? If you're praying and it's a hard time, you start by acknowledging, oh God, we are in this time and this is happening and we can barely stand it, the amount of anxiety or the thing that is going on. I can barely breathe. I can't figure out how to put my feet on the ground. But I know that somewhere in the universe there is folks will say God is able. Life is able. You know, the force that moves and drives us in the universe is able when as an individual or a group we can't, right? And so the prayer helps us align with that somethingness that is beyond our immediate ability, right? So that's not new. But what makes it new is that we do it now in terms of who we are. I haven't been who I am right now ever before, right? So in this moment when I pray, that prayer is new because I'm going back to what I said first, the listening, the level, the depth, the sincerity and the earnestness of my need to listen with compassion because things are so hard, right? To listen with compassion and to bear witness. What I want to say about that, I did say I was going to stop talking, but you know,
Mhm.
what I want to say about that is, but look, my head is going so fast, my mouth's trying to keep up. I'm trying to keep up. But uh, oh shit, what was I saying? I forgot. I said if we are bearing witness
Life.
to listening with deep compassion, right, and
Yes.
stepping into this chaos with our present knowingness, our present awareness, right? I got
Mm.
it. So what I was going to say is we're noticing a lot on the internet, the the very human expression of anger. There's a lot of name calling and blaming. Very human. It's what we do, right? But what I'm inviting us to is to take a look at what our response is. It is how we're responding. Oh, I like that. Is it in service to our ability to identify our spiritual practice, our ability to find our way to our steadiness so that there's more of us to join, to connect. There's more of us to strategize. There's more of us that can have some measure of hopefulness when hopefulness is unreasonable and illogical. There's nothing around right now that says we should be hoping, right? But the spirit world, that spiritual lineage means we access that which we can't see. There's no immediate evidence of it, but it does not disappear because there's no immediate evidence of it, right? It is still there. We can access that. That's what prayer is for. That's what the deep breath is for. We have all of these things. So, yeah. So I'm going to stop there because the train will keep going and the motor will keep revving up. So let me go ahead and make a little space for my dear beloved friend here.
The train is welcome at whatever pace it's going. And I really want to hold out also for acknowledging the dream of what so many of us are moving towards, the
Mhm,
that dream of justice, of connectedness, of liberation, of healing, of community, of like that dream that may not feel as present, welcoming it.
yes, yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of love for you in the chat. Loving your messy, loving your hope and your wisdom, and the way you're showing up, walking in heavy. Full
Mhm.
on welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm holding like this, and I'm holding like this. Let's meet the bigness of the moment, not let's shrink.
Yeah.
I feel
Yes.
like there are so many of. Did I lose you? Oh, you're back. Okay. The video just cut off for a moment.
What just
I'll let
happened?
you catch. We're getting back in sync. The internet got okay. We should be back, maybe. Yeah, we're back.
I may be frozen. Let's see what happens. One of us
I can hear
may
you.
be.
You're definitely here. So
Hmm.
I'm going to talk for a moment while your video is syncing back up. And when you start to hear my voice in sync with you, again, just start to
Yes,
talk.
we hear.
And
Okay,
so,
so that's
great.
a very interesting. Are you there? Very
Now
interesting
we're back.
moment
All
to
right.
have a break. Right?
Uh-huh. It's the
Okay,
how to stay in
right?
that versus the, okay, everything is peaceful all the time. Like I'm thinking about nervous system regulation versus nervous system flexibility. Like that idea of
Mm-hmm.
regulation that says, okay, there's a normal, calm,
Mm-hmm.
cool, social, safe and social. Fight is a helpful, actual place to go. Sometimes flee makes sense to get out of the situation. And yet, how do we not just get hijacked by them all the time? Regulation for me often is like ground rules. Like I rarely use
Yeah.
ground rules with a group because they often just create a dominant
Mm-hmm.
culture in a way that only some voices actually get to say anything there. And flexibility is something, nervous system flexibility is something a teacher gave to me that I continue to use. Like, how do we get into the rage? How do we get into the grief? How do we let ourselves get loud and get big? And then how do we actually get to scale down? Just like working with de escalation, you got to meet the bigness of the storm before you can go to any other place. If we just start here when somebody's screaming, it's not going to work a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Think about times we've
Yeah.
facilitated conflicts together where folks are yelling in the room. And if we just said, everybody, we should really just slow down. Instead, I think about one we facilitated together recently where we just had to let them go and be big, and then we had to meet them in the bigness. I feel like one of the declarations you said of like, this is important what's happening here, just meeting people and welcoming what we're bringing into the room, actually, like welcoming the train that you're bringing in. Like it doesn't have to change, the train gets to be here. Thank you for flexing it. We need that in here. And at the same time,
Yeah.
how does that not become our only mode? And when we can't get into that, then we're
Yeah.
lost. Similar to the ground. Like if we
Yeah.
can't find a sense of grounding that we're used to, how do we not suddenly say we're lost all the time? Like in our talk before we got on
Mm-hmm.
here, we were talking about how the ground is never still. The earth is not still. This idea that our ground will always
Mm-hmm.
be the same is not going to serve us. Instead, we need to recognize that our ground will be different. We will be on cement, and then we will be on soil, and then we will be on a hill, and then it will rain underneath, and that hill becomes mud. How do we stay alive? How do
Yeah.
we notice the moments we jump into the air and find a way to breathe and sing? Because it means we're going to have to breathe into
Mm-hmm.
different parts of our body. I think about performers who know how to
Mm-hmm.
perform with their back. Like, can you welcome your back into it and let that not be just a place
Mm-hmm.
of protection, but of full life and range?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Mm-hmm.
part of what feels like that full life and range for me also is the way in which so many of my trans and gender expansive and non binary siblings are holding in this moment of like, hey, y'all, this is not new. This is not new. Just
Yeah.
because the White House decided to put transgender on a website not too long ago doesn't mean things have changed. And we have survived generations of intentional genocide. Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
not the end of the world. When we think about how colonists came to the now US and like intentionally went after two spirit folks, indigenous, gender expansive peoples, to kill them, that was to try to destabilize a society. And guess what? Folks have found ways to thrive, and sometimes the shape you're in may shift. How do we
Mm-hmm.
not damn ourselves in those moments when our shape shifts? How do we say, oh, this new shape, how is it serving me? And what else is needed?
Mm-hmm.
We get to grieve what was. Don't miss that. Don't think I'm saying ignore the grief.
Yeah. Yeah.
And grieve and
Mm-hmm.
welcome the other places and be where we are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
yeah, go for it.
No, no, you were in the middle of a
I
sentence.
was gonna try and ask a question. I'm thinking and the I'm thinking about uproot, that language
hmm
you've used before, the need to uproot. And you said this phrase before: rage can be a lack of control alongside primal sovereignty. Like
I said that. I'm
you
pretty,
did. And so,
but
yeah,
go on. Go.
I'm curious. Like for me, that primal sovereignty is not a word we use often.
Yeah.
And so to go to that place of sovereignty, of choice in a different way, that
Mm-hmm.
rage can get us into. I'm curious,
Mm-hmm.
like when you think about letting go of control and that welcoming actually a new sense of freedom that is more base, that is more simple, that is more grounded in a way that, there's dirt under your fingernails.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how do you move toward lack of control and welcome that when you're in you and when you're in we and community and group?
hmm So I want to acknowledge that I'm a little bit not as present because my heart, when you started talking about our trans brothers and sisters, I got a wave of grief that I'm going to need to take a second to breathe through so I can pay attention.
Mhm.
Ah, it is very challenging. And I suspect this happens with other people as well. There is a certain way I get very excited to talk about the big, the bold, especially in this kind of setting. It's set up for us to really support each other and the people who are listening, to sort of come out of off the battlefield a little bit, right? Get a little bit of break of be right in it, and we get to be in the sort of the place of broad perspective and sort of look at the situation, not from standing in it, but outside of it. But there's something about the way you said that that took me on the battlefield, and then I was no longer at the big, broad place. And I just want to name that and give that part of me a little bit of softness, and also notice how important it is to be in touch with that
Yeah,
place that experiences that the kind of devastation one community in our global family is being targeted and symbolically devastated because we as a collective aren't taking on our own shadows, right? We've sort of, and we do, like, our people were this, our people meaning
yeah,
Black folks were this and continue to be this, right? That this target, I feel like on a spiritual level, is a place to focus our unhealed fear, rage, dislike. You use the word even disgust, right? We don't have a place. Is what we're talking about is trying to have these parts of ourselves come to the table and be able to sit. So we actually invite our wholeness back, right? But for centuries, what we do is target a group of people, and they become symbolic of something that we can't face within ourselves, right? And so I just had a moment of, just such a well of grief for how what we're doing, particularly the trans folks. It is beyond heartbreaking. Um, uh, I just had a moment. So yeah, let me
mhm.
just breathe into that. Um,
Do you want to actually breathe into it?
yeah. I'm noticing I'm getting a chance to practice what I was talking about, about listening deeply, bearing witness to. So thank you for the space to be able to slow that down. There's so many thoughts I have about that. I think what I want to say is this moment is where I think new spiritual practice starts, to be able to notice an opportunity to slow down and be in heart level solidarity with the group of people, right? I think that's a starting point. Um, and anybody who's listening to this call now or who listens to the recording, it may be that as you hear me say those words, there might be a situation, event, a place in the world, identity, group of people that come to your mind and heart. And that's one of these sort of seeds into the beginning of sprouts kind of spiritual practice where we notice those kind of moments within ourselves and allow ourselves to be in. Like I went down in that depth, in that well of grief. I'm a little bit off
Yeah.
subject, but I just feel like this is important to say in this moment. Part of working with grief is to build, to cultivate the kind of internal muscles. So you can go down in there, you can breathe with it, but you know you can come back out, right? You know, you come back out. I feel like we just demonstrated a little bit of that. So thank you for bearing witness with me and in being a place where I can also come back out. I can be real. I can show you that moment, but I also can come right back out because I know I was never unconnected. I was never
Mhm.
disconnected to you, right? Very, very important. Thank you. Thank you. So now I want to talk a little bit about uh,
Yeah,
the
I'm going to jump in
primal.
and just invite you to
Okay.
come out slow. You don't have to force out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the
Yeah.
reminder. Yeah. 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 I turned that page.
Yeah.
Whoop. But I was in there. I was in there. And
Yeah.
then I think that's important.
It's
I think that's
similar. Like
important.
as I was big and like shouting and declaring stuff that I don't always say out
Mm-hmm.
loud, especially in public. Like there's a lot of that that feels
Mm-hmm.
dangerous to say in public and feels important. And when you went into grief, I noticed my reaction to be like, let me go meet you there immediately. The parts of me that were like, oh, I need to
Mm-hmm.
be in that. What wisdom that those
Mm-hmm.
had. Thank you for saying, hey, we don't need to leave anybody alone, just like we don't want to be left alone. And it challenged me to slow down to say, how do I breathe into this bigness and meet you where and be with you where you are? Like, how do I be where I am and you be where you are and we feel connected without having to change where we are?
Yeah. Mm. Mm.
Like, that
I
is
think
new
there's
for me.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, because if we're sitting in a meeting, we will be in different places based on what we're bringing to any situation, right? And to not make people wrong for like being one way or the other, but really try to stay connected
Mhm.
as we keep practicing showing up as authentically as possible.
Yeah.
Again, both ancient and then we have an opportunity to have a renewed relationship with that because of the nature of the times we're in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you. I appreciate that. And I could feel that well, we get to stay together. You were with me.
Mhm.
But I believe I could also feel, I have no idea who's listening, but I feel the the field, the field. I feel
Yes.
the hearts who are circled around us on this call. I feel the ancestors who are
Mhm.
circled around us on this call, right?
Mhm.
And I know they can hold it. I know they can.
Yes.
I know they can. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
Mm. I think I'm not sure about this. I'm gonna say it out loud. I feel like rage can be informed by our ability to go where we just went. Like, I wonder if some of rage is, it's not a word I use very often, a little almost like performative, or a lack of ability for us to really anchor down in what else we might also be feeling. And then there is just rage as is what it is. Maybe we have less experience talking with it in public, so less experience talking about what it is, because we do it. Some of us do it less. I know a couple of really good, strong ragers. I can appreciate. Right now, I'm appreciating those folks that I know that are familiar with rage, as it is not my go-to. It is very uncomfortable for me, and yet something about being authentic and the different stages
Mhm.
where we are sort of primes the space so that there's room for rage as well. Authentic, and maybe even inauthentic. Maybe we just trying to
Mhm.
find our rage, kind of messing around with it, trying to, like the whole stage of being allowed to be bold and big and
Yes.
wrong and
Yes.
messy, and also be
Yes.
right and
Yeah.
prophetic. And
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like, to be all of
Yes.
it, to sort of in
And to
in the
help the
sense of rage.
body know
I would
that
say,
it
and
can
that's really,
go there. Like the components that your
yeah.
breath can, your voice can go there, your breath, your body, your bigness can go there, your big, like
Yeah.
to just be able to collapse at a time, to grieve, to let that
Mhm.
fully happen. Even if you're like, this isn't all of it, this
Yeah.
could be more, but to practice is
Yeah.
part of what I'm hearing.
To pr-
Yeah.
to practice. Yeah. I think that is new. I think, with particularly with grief, but with raging as well. There was a thing on the internet. We noticed some crazy stuff on there. But this was really cool. As a school that had this room in the teachers' lounge, where it was glassed in space, where you could go in there and close the door and just
I
scream.
love
I
that.
thought that was
I
so
love
fabulous.
that.
So, I mean, you could also cry in there. You could wail. You could go in there. Now, to me, that's very
Yeah.
intelligent.
Glass.
Having a space. What's even more intelligent is healing our society, so there's a less of a need for that. But until we do, I think that was just it's just a brilliant move to be able to. Um, primal sovereignty. I think it's exactly what we're talking about. Sovereignty, the ability to know that your full range of expression is um, is
Yes.
essential. It's
Yes.
wanted. Um, there's room
Mhm.
for it. Um, Yeah, so the sovereignty feels to me in this moment very much connected to community. It's not alone or by itself, but it's allowing the individual to rise, being held in community, and that we all have that. The seemingly opposing thing, where the powerful individual that's doing the spiritual work, and the community, and what we become when we're together. That thing, what did he talk about? That thing that we're greater than the sum of the parts,
Mhm.
right? The way we become something extraordinary together that we can't do alone, right? But all of those pieces in there together, we vilify one or the other. Oh, too individual, or the community. I heard somebody earlier today talking about how consensus was the worst thing ever because you can't ever get to it. It's like, how does that actually work? Like, especially when a group of people are
Mhm.
traumatized, or different interests, or can't tell the difference between when it's sort of spirit led or ego led, all those things. It just becomes very, very difficult. I acknowledge that some people have been able to use it well, but it's a particular person I'm quoting. Um, uh, but both things, both the individual, the spiritual work, and then the communal. And a thing I like to think about is how much more powerful the community is if we're doing our
Mhm.
individual work, right? So sovereignty, not as this sort of, capitalist, I'm going it alone, but a sense of within
Yeah.
the communal, within the collective, I am strong and powerful and
Yes.
connected to community. I am within this collective. This is my little
Hmm.
piece, right? And I'm also a part
Yes.
of this whole, right? It's holding the truth of both of
Yeah.
those things. Um,
Yeah.
mhm,
I think about the one who shows up who says, "Hey, I am feeling this thing that is never named in this room," and how they
mhm,
are both holding it for themselves, saying, "This is my truth, and it is for the collective." Like, as I
mhm,
worked with
mhm,
some
mhm,
folks recently, I was doing some leadership coaching, and one person was got really sad, and so like the video turned off. You could hear the audio of some crying. They came back on. The eyes showed crying, and I just got to say, "That's welcome here. You can absolutely cry. A lot is happening." And the person was able to say, "Thank
mhm,
you for acknowledging it. It feels really scary. I hear you're scared. That is welcome. It makes a lot of sense to be
yeah.
scared. Is there anything else you want to tell us?"
Mhm,
And then the person was able to say, 90% of these tears have nothing to do with our conversation.
mhm,
And it
mhm,
helped that person to say, but there's 10% that I just am feeling here. And that left
mhm,
space. It created space for someone else to say, like, oh, I have that anxiety. It shows up different. That's yours, but I have it. And so that greater than the sum of our
mhm,
parts, like, how do we start to welcome in what goes beyond what we're used to welcoming in and say
mhm,
that gets to be
mhm,
here? Yeah.
mhm. And how do we do that beside that sense of urgency that there isn't time for
Yes.
this?
Right.
Do something. Like, we don't have time for this. We need to do something. How do we? And I think there's one of those opposing truths that we hold.
Hmm.
Um, I have this practice, which sounds a little crazy, but I'm gonna share it with you. I call it slowing down time.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say I got 10 minutes to get ready. And if I don't get ready, I'm going to be late, right? But I feel like I have more things to do than the 10 minutes. So, what I'll do, one of those minutes, I will literally slow down. This is so crazy. And I'm not high. I'll slow down to try to affect my relationship with the other
Yes.
9 minutes, right? So, literally, start to move slowly. I might say something like, you know what, I'm gonna walk
Hmm.
outside of time for a minute, do a little magicianing. It's a word I made up. Well, I probably didn't make it up, but um, I'm going to walk beside time. I'm going to slow myself. I'm going to breathe deeply. I'm going to be really intentional as I pick up this one thing just for a minute. And then I had to set an alarm so I don't mess up, because you can't be late. But then when that alarm goes off and that slowing down is over, something resets a little bit for me, so that I'm speeding back up, but I'm not speeding back up with its sort of mindless urgency that I had before, a little bit more intentional. Okay, so uh, okay, what was I talking about
Slowing
before that?
time, the urgency, there's not always the time to actually be. Yeah.
Urgency, urgency. Right, relationship with urgency. Um, mm, we have to do it, and we have to
Hmm.
do it now. The world is fall. The world is
Hmm.
falling to shit, and if we don't save it, you know, mm, I think we have a lot of work to do on the narratives, the stories we say. I don't think we're gonna save too much anything with the urgency. I don't think so. We just gonna be urgent. We're gonna be
Yeah.
urgent. We're gonna be urgently contributing to what's happening. I don't think we'll say anything. I don't think there's anything for us to save. Who is this us I'm talking about, right? There's a big picture narrative having on, many understandings and experiences of reality happening at once, right? And so within that, what is mine to be and do? What is mine to contribute? Is Do I have a mandate to speed up, in a sense that to boldly challenge myself to stretch and move out of my comfort zone? If I'm in a bubble, is the universe asking me to burst that bubble and be uncomfortable, to do some things that I haven't done before? Have I been breaking my neck for years and I'm exhausted? Is the universe saying, slow the hell
Hmm.
down? Like, you're not one to save us. Slow down. So whatever brilliance you have, you can have access to it. If you are exhausted because you think it's your job to fix it, now we don't have you. We have the remnants of you. We have the
Yeah.
residual of you. You're lost in exhaustion. Maybe the universe is saying to you, go somewhere. My dad used to say, go somewhere and
And then
sit
someone
down.
else will show up. Someone else
And somebody
often
else will
will
show up.
show up.
That's right.
It doesn't look how you think
That's
it's
right.
going to
That's right.
look. And it
Right.
happens.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So if we can do that, then we create a kind of
Mm-hmm.
mosaic. People listening, again, the individual
Yes.
and the collective, people listening to what they're called to, right? And then together we fit those pieces together. And then my belief is that, again, we're not doing it. This the realms that can hold so much more than we individually can do are the ones that we show up serious and doing what we're supposed to do. It is almost like a kind of magic is maybe too strong a word to use, but like something can happen when we show up and we're present. Something that can happen that maybe can't happen when we are tensed, stressed out, when we're in our contraction, right? The baby comes between the contraction and the expanse. Maybe the baby that we're birthing, the new world that we would love to see, this world, more adjusted, more healed version of a world that we would like to see, maybe in both in a relationship with the contraction and the expansion. And the expansion is this healed, the primal sovereignty is an example maybe of the expansion. The one who is exhausted, who gets some rest, example of the expansion. The one who is curious about spiritual practice and able to get on the edge of the comfortable and be messy instead of the nice neat, right? This may be expansion. And the contraction is important. It is the sister to the expansion. The contraction is important, so we're not to vilify the contraction. We're not to feel like there's no need for the contraction. We all get moments where we're
Yes.
scared and we're lost. Who on this call has never felt lost, right? I mean, we all
Exactly.
get that, right? And the contraction is part of the
Mm-hmm.
whole, right? So yeah, I think if there are answers, if there is healing, if there's a way through this time, I feel like we hold the vision, right? But then we do the thing that we're called
Mm-hmm.
to do, right? And then allow for the man. That's my spiritual roots talking. There's a point at which I do what I can do, and then I hand it
Mm-hmm.
over. I hand it over to that which is
Yes.
beyond my ability to even
Yes. Yes.
conceive. You know them that's
Yes.
ordering the planets. I want them
Yes.
to take over at some point. That which breathes through me, I'm not doing the breathing. My lungs are being breathed by something that's much
Yes.
smarter than I am. I want to be in the energy, the
Yes.
vibration of to be in alignment with that. So I'm not working against it,
Yes,
right?
and to have that
So yeah,
release is
yeah,
to also let go of that internalized empire, especially for those of us who grew up here, is
yeah,
to say, we're not going to have control because that control is a type of domination. The idea that we will own, we will know, we won't know a lot of the time. Let us
yeah,
be surprised.
yeah.
Let us let someone else
Mm-hmm.
know. Let us get to learn from
Mm-hmm.
each other because it reminds us that we need each other. The idea that we have it all together and that we know is that empire inside that serves us not at
Mm-hmm.
all in the long run. None of us. It makes
Mm-hmm.
us shift
Mm-hmm.
from a place that an ER can't run on. If an ER says, we got everybody, everybody's going to get healed, it won't work. Instead, they have to make choices about triage that are life and death
Mm-hmm.
choices often. And
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
trying to help as
yeah,
many as possible, knowing that it will never be perfect.
yeah,
To release that idea of
yeah,
perfection
yeah.
is to let go of that idea that we are the colonizer. We are the one who,
Mm-hmm.
we are the enslaver. because those are the ones who say they
Mhm.
know, they can control, they have it all together. When in reality, in our lives, even when we see elected officials who speak like that now, we know they don't have it all together. We know they are lying to our faces. So why join their lie when we have another choice?
Mhm. Mhm.
Like you said, like we get to slow time. So often,
Mhm.
it's that lesson, slow time to go fast, go slow to go fast. I love the very practical, you got 10 minutes, take one of them and go in slow motion. It reminds me of the
Mhm.
ways in which
Mhm.
you dream of galaxies
Mhm.
and welcome in sci-fi, like integrating that into life. What are the dreams that seem
Mhm.
impossible, but you're like, they do something out there? How do we
Yeah.
manifest
Yeah. Yeah.
those in this moment? How do we embody them in simple ways? When you grieve, how do you not
Yeah.
grieve and shut it off? How do you let it be open? Because if it's shut off, you
Mhm.
just reinforce it. You rage. If you
Mhm.
only rage into a pillow, you are also teaching your body that
Mhm.
you can only rage into a pillow. There are times where that's the only option you have.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I've had that as my only
Yeah.
option sometimes. And you have to find the moment to get it out too, because otherwise it just stays in your
Yeah.
body. And so I
Yeah.
want us to
Yeah.
move towards an
Okay.
end too. And so as we move towards an
Mhm.
end, I'm curious if there's any invitation you want to share or offer that is brief to help folks.
Mhm. Mhm. Brief. Do you know
That's
me?
why I
What you
said it.
talking about?
That's why I said it.
Brief.
I so appreciate you.
Let's see.
Mm, yeah. Mm.
So I hope is
Oh,
this
it
going to
is.
be
Yeah.
recorded? People be able to listen to it. Yeah. So I hope as people listen, they pick out what resonates and use it as a little piece of something. I think it'd be very easy. I don't have any control of how people going, what they're going to do, but I'm going to say this just in case it's useful. Um, r- Rather than to hang on to things that they disagree with, I hope folks will find where the resonance
Yes.
is, right? And take whatever the kernel, a little idea, the phrase, a segment, right? And to use that in service to um, uh, being in alignment with the storm that is
Mm.
happening now. How are we in relationship to and with that storm, right? We ain't gotta board up the windows
No.
and sit it out. We ain't got to get destroyed necessarily. While I want to acknowledge that some people will be destroyed in this storm, they are and they will be. And God help us, right? For the people that we will lose, we are losing. The people, often marginalized people on the edges. Like this is the kind of storm where people's lives are at stake, and I want to acknowledge that. While I'm acknowledging all the glory and beauty and power that I believe is possible, I'm also acknowledging that extraordinarily devastating loss and the amount of pain and harm that's going on. I want to name those things as well. They sit as truths right beside the truth of who we
Hmm.
can be, so I want to just acknowledge both those things. So yes, not short, but let's see if I can shorten. Yeah, like the storm. Instead of seeing the storm as the thing we prepare for, we get through, get up the other side and go, phew, I think we can orient ourselves to the storm being central to these times. Who we're going to be with and for and through and because of, in spite of the storm. Like, how are we going to navigate ourselves as a storm, as our reality? What is grounding when the
Yeah.
ground is moving, right? What is cooling when the fire
Yeah.
is burning? Where are your ports in the storm? Where are our ports in the storm? Where are our visions? How our spiritual practices help us to be attuned to the storm as we move, as long as we have to, in service to the alchemizing of our of humanity toward hopefully something
I
better.
don't
We
know.
don't know yet. We the fuck might not even make it if we keep blowing everything up and and what we're doing to the earth. Like we don't know that we'll be here. But if we are, let us, I hope, be in service, work, act, be, love, listen, in tune, practice in service to the generations who may come beyond us.
I love that invitation. I just even noticed as I listened to you, being with those that will lose was just right there. And so as I listened, I was just tending to saying, oh, I noticed that part that wants to run away. It's okay. It's safe to feel the
Mhm.
sadness of that
Mhm.
loss.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And
yes.
then my invitation was going to be to play. Find the person who can help you
Mhm.
play. Find the way that can help you
Yes,
play. That gets you out of
yes.
it's all devastation. Because even in the worst of
Mhm.
spirals, I think about this course I took. I need to close. Music of the Holocaust and the World War II era. Find another moment to talk about that.
Mm.
It was looking at what is the
Yes.
music of a genocide and
Mm.
like
Mm.
looking it in the face. We cried together every week. And we still listen to this gorgeous music. And so, what is the thing that helps
Mm.
you play enough that you get to create so that you get to remember your range? Range. So that
Mm.
we all get to hold our
Range.
range because that's how we get to move forward more wholly for however long it is. Let us take advantage of each and every
Yeah.
moment to grieve, to rage, to laugh, to hope, to dream, to forget,
Mm.
and to feel held in it.
Mm.
I just want to say thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks everybody who joined.
Thank
I'm gonna try and get this up on